Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto suchedoye valahari samyao sanputoshe. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, 百千万劫难遭遇，我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome. My name is Heng Ju. Today is November 22nd. We're switching over into Sagittarius. November 21st there in California and in the Western Hemisphere. We are going to be investigating the Flower Garland Sutra today, so if that's what you've come to join, you're in the right place. As they say in Maine, don't you move a dad-burned inch. You're right where you belong. So let's get started with our lecture. While the text comes up, I want to express my gratitude to all of the Dharma friends whose efforts, without any remuneration, material reward, simply for the joy of helping spread the Dharma, they week after week selflessly give their time to put this lecture series out into the world. And there's a group of people in Berkeley, California doing it. There's a group of people here in Gold Coast of Queensland, Australia doing it. And those are the visible tips of the iceberg out of the water. Underneath are all the friends who sacrifice in a variety of ways, so that when it comes time to jiang jing, comes time to explain the sutras, this can go online and we can join in. Turning through the pandemic, because of the power of the internet and Zoom and the tools that we have, so we are certainly standing on the shoulders of giants for whom turning the Dharma Wheel, do you know that image? The Dharma Wheel rolling, meaning keeping the Buddha's teachings in people's ears and eyes and consciousness, is almost a duty. It's selfless service to living beings everywhere, is the way the ancients saw it. So for us to be able to step into that tradition and put another, as they say, put another brick in the wall of Buddhist scholarship, right, is truly a joy. So thank you all for being here, taking part, and it is truly a collaborative effort. It's not a performance. It's not theatrical in any way, but it's a collaborative investigation. That's the word that Master Hua used to say. We are looking into the Buddha's wisdom, and he would always say, it's not a question of can you lecture, it's a question of can the audience hear. And if someone who can't lecture well, if the audience can really hear, his lecture passes. And if the person lectures really well, but the audience is unable to discern, they don't use critical thinking, then the lecture is very ordinary. So if I'll do my best and you all listen well, and we will make this turning point in the life of our Dharma body and wisdom life, our Fa Shen Hui Ming, right? First step in our process is to invite the invisible but real Avatamsaka, the Flower Garland Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, to draw near. So we're doing that musically today. And yes, all of you old-time music snobs, banjos do count as music. There's story there, which we won't tell. Anti-banjo discrimination. Here we go. Namo Ta Phang Guang Fo Hua Yen Jin Hua Yen Hai O Pu Sa Na Ta Phang Hua Yen Hua Yen Hai O Pu Sa Na Ta Phang Hua One more. We're going to slip back down to page 54 quickly here. In our text, which is a work in progress, we translate as we go, and when we run out of text, we translate more. There we are. Okay, make that nice and big so people can read it. That's where we finished last week. Quick summary, called the Flower Garland Sutra, the largest Buddhist text in terms of content. Not the longest, but the largest. Chapter inside it called the 10 Stages chapter, talking about Bodhisattva's practices. 10th stage out of 10. In that 10th stage, we're almost done with the prose part, which is the first 2/3. When the prose part is done, we launch into the verses part, which reiterates the principles of the prose, but does it in meter. Bum bum ba bum ba bum. Bum bum ba bum ba 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 bum bum bum. Usually it's 7. So that's where we are. What are we talking about? We're talking about the 10th stage Bodhisattva and what he can do, what she can do, gender neutral. And 2 speakers. One is Vajra Treasury of Vajra, storehouse of adamantine Bodhisattva, who is explaining, and Moon of Liberation, or Liberated Moon. You don't think of the moon being bound up, do you? So it's probably not Liberated Moon. So it's Moon of Liberation, the splendid light, the roundness of freedom, like that. He is the questioner, and he's representing the audience there. So he is your spokesperson as he asks on their behalf, and then Vajra Treasury responds. So the topic they're talking about is, what can a 10th stage Bodhisattva do? What are his or her abilities? And there's a question in the air. There's a doubt that has arisen in the minds of the audience, which I like because it demonstrates critical thinking, skepticism. They're not just swallowing it, and the invitation to us to do the same, not just take it on faith because the Buddha says so, or Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva says so. We need to think about it. We have to bring our minds into the meditation hall. We don't just check them at the door. So, Bodhisattva here, critically thinking about the claims made about the 10th stage Bodhisattva, which sound so far out that the audience is like, the way you describe his abilities, particularly his capacity for knowledge, that's what's being discussed. How much can he know? How much Dharma can he hold? And the the problem, so why would you challenge that? Because what's the difference between 10th stage Bodhisattva and Buddha is the question. So that was what was asked last week. Now today we're going to get this discussion of that, and Vajra Treasury is about to demonstrate again. He entered Samadhi and did something incredible before, but the question returned. What is the Buddha's ability, right? So Vajra Treasury said, to summarize, here in the Dharma cloud stage, that's the name of the 10th stage, all of the states of the Bodhisattva are that way. If I were to explain them to their end, I'd never finish, even if I had an infinite amount of time. There's too many states. Okay, here we are. We are on page 54, Jie To Yue Pusa Yan. Okay, here we go, ready? Jie To Yue Pusa Yan Fozi. 若菩萨神通境界如是，佛神通力，其福云何? He said. Moon of Liberation Bodhisattva said, disciple of the Buddha, if the Bodhisattva's states of psychic abilities are so developed, what about the spiritual powers of a Buddha? So, interesting, what we're being shown is the limits of the imagination of the audience. Like they can't imagine. No way, as you described, what a bodhisattva can do on the stage of the stage of the Dharma cloud. That's not possible, right? As far as we know. So, okay, that's a challenge, isn't it? So, what happens next? Here we go. 金刚藏言佛子譬如有人于四天下取一块土而作是言为无边世界大地土多为此土多我观汝问亦复如是如来智慧无边无等云何而与菩萨比量 Okay, we'll take this one idea at a time here. Okay. Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva replied, disciples of the Buddha, suppose someone picked up a clod of soil from anywhere on the 4 continents and then asked, is there more soil on the planets that comprise boundlessly many world systems? Or is there more soil here in my hand? Your question is basically the same. A Tathagata's wisdom is boundless and incomparable. How could you compare it to the wisdom of a bodhisattva? Okay, now, this is useful and helpful because it answers a question that maybe we didn't ask, but it's, I'll talk about myself. When I, in trying to wrap my mind around what was being said here, it helped me understand something about the Buddha's state. Okay, what's going on? Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva said, you want to know. You asked about the 10th stage Bodhisattva and a Buddha. Okay, disciples of the Buddha, give you a hypothetical case. Here's my analogy. Suppose somebody took 一块土, so just, picked up a chunk of soil. Let's say it's clay or sand or loam, whatever it is. Picked up a chunk to fill the hand. Anywhere on the 4 continents, where the 4 continents are north, south, east, west, they make up one world system. They are southern Jambudvipa, eastern Purva Videha, western Aparagodaniya, and northern Uttarakaru. Those are the Sanskrit names. And every world system has all 4, 1, 2, north, south, east, west, and then Mount Sumeru in the middle. Then seas of fragrant water, oceans of fragrant water, and then Iron Ring Mountains, sun and the moon, and the heavens above, and that's a world system. That's how the Buddha described his cosmology. Okay. Suppose somebody picked up a chunk of earth, put it in their hand, and then said to you, is there more soil in the planets that comprise boundlessly many world systems? Or is there more soil here in my hand? That's basically the same question. So he doesn't even bother to answer the question. He considers it self-evident, right? So obvious. So he says, a Buddha's wisdom is like the amount of earth on the boundlessly many worlds compared to the amount of wisdom a bodhisattva has. How can you compare the Tathagata's wisdom, the Buddha's wisdom, with the wisdom of a bodhisattva? Okay. Last time we were talking about the capacity of the bodhisattva to contain the Dharma. I launched into impromptu, I didn't plan that, a description of human consciousness and what I was calling governors to consciousness, meaning, how come I don't know what you're thinking? Why don't I know your thoughts? When our bodhisattva, who has the psychic ability obtained from cultivation of the Dharma, can know thoughts. I can't. Why not? My consciousness is limited. How come dogs hear better than I do? How come kookaburras see better than I do? Consciousness limits me in my set of skandhas, my body and mind components that come with me when I'm born here. I was trying to explain this idea that if we did not have those governors, those limitations, we could easily be overwhelmed by the amount of available sense data that would be flooding our senses. I use the example of people with synesthesia who mix up input from eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, so they can hear colors and they can see sounds, right? A friend of mine was in her teenage years afflicted with synesthesia, and everybody thought she was crazy until a wise doctor said, "Oh no, her neurochemistry is not putting up a strong enough boundary between the senses." She learned how to contain it and turned it into a remarkable painting talent. She started to do paints, all kinds, oil and watercolors and pastels and enamel and acrylics and things. And she did synesthesia paintings, so that the colors and could take musical shape, musical intervals, and sounds took color, Remarkable painter. And when you see it, it's just so bright and clearly seeing differently, right? So, okay, we have these built-in limiters. I call it governors, not political governors, but functions, systems that control the amount and the kind of intake we get through our language learners, which is what? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Knowledge learners, that is to say. How do we know stuff? Through our senses. Yeah, I guess you can learn through dreams, but that's still the picture reader that reads dreams in our brain is still cognizant of images that come in, right? We learn about images that way, through our dreams. So there is more than eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body when we learn things. We can also learn through, for example, intuition, which is not, that would be mind, but it's a little understood capacity that humans have. But in general, the Chinese call somebody who is educated, 多闻, 波闻广记, someone who has heard a lot. And the picture of to hear is an ear inside a door, the Chinese character 闻, So we put our ear inside the door and learn something. Oh, I heard somebody say, right? Mostly how knowledge is passed on in our world is through you told me, I heard you, I learned, So radio, powerful. television, powerful. Internet, powerful. Podcasts, powerful. The way we absorb knowledge. Okay, what if we didn't have a limiter and every single language system, from birds to speakers of, Basque language or Urdu or Swahili, was equally obtainable, was available to us and understandable all at once, right? You go crazy. Okay, so that's the idea. Now, what Vajra Treasury is saying in answer to the question is, the Buddha has cultivated away all of those barriers and boundaries, all of the limiters that were largely put in place by this illusory self. Useful, but illusory self. It's not a real thing, but it sure keeps me in one piece so I can walk down the street without collapsing, overwhelmed by so much sound, so much impact on my nose and my tongue, going crazy by too much impact. We're able to function because of those limiters. The Buddha was slowly, through a gradual process of meditation, of, he's able to, one si xiu, he hears it, he considers it, and then he cultivates the Dharma, and bit by bit the boundaries of the self yield. And he is able to, without going crazy, participate in all of the input at once, without all those limiters that the self holds in place. So, Vajra Treasury says the Buddha has none of those left. His knowledge, his ability to process, to know what is going on and to respond, never ends. His consciousness is complete, is 360 degrees, 24/7, right? So it's all around all the time. Time and space are completely malleable for the Buddha. And so, sitting right here, he can know the world. Even Lao Tzu talked about the sage. One of the things Lao Tzu said about the sage was he can sit in his hut and know what's going on in the next village, and he doesn't have to go there. He's perfectly content to stay right home because he knows. Pretty much same old, next door, right? So why bother? Now, the Bodhisattva's answer to that is because of vows. Because if I don't bother, there's just too much. What he hears is when he guan shi yin, when he contemplates the sounds of the next village, he hears suffering and he's moved. So you would say he's a little more socially motivated than Lao Tzu's sage. But the idea is we can intake so much more than what I'm hearing right now. Somebody who switches into Spanish in front of me, I'm lost. I haven't learned Spanish yet. I hope to one day. I would love to learn Spanish. But I can't yet. And so my consciousness is so limiting. I have to stick to the syntax that I learned, right? So, my goodness, how narrow is our consciousness? And what kind of a cave of consciousness do we allow ourselves to hide in from what is possible? So, Vajra Treasury says, okay, somebody picks up a cloud of earth, says, okay, is there more here? Is there more on multiple infinite planets? So obvious, there's more on the planets. He says, right, the Buddha's consciousness never stops. There's no limit left. So he can hear everything, anything, anywhere, in all places, in all times. Don't compare it to the 10th stage Bodhisattva who is way awake. He's so close to the Buddha state, but he is still a 10th stage Bodhisattva with a boundary around it. The Buddha has taken away that boundary. So, right? So I say, when I heard this, I thought, oh, yeah, I think it gives me a new appreciation of the Buddha's wisdom Because why? It fundamentally doesn't stop. There's no knowledge unavailable to the Buddha right now, on the spot. So, and that's my mind when I've cultivated it to Buddhahood. Your mind when you cultivate yours to Buddhahood. How cool is that? That our minds, and I don't want to say brain because it's more than the brain, our minds are this potential infinite, as a geek friend of mine from Silicon Valley said, it's a single server portal with infinite bandwidth. Nothing you can't pick up. Right. So, okay, so far so good. This example? And this is a fun comparison, because when I read this, I thought, oh, that's a lot like the Buddha's teaching of the rosewood leaves. And it was like, what? And when I looked at it, indeed, it wasn't like that teaching. What am I talking about? There's a, not that, thank you very much. Let me get here we go, the Simsapa Sutra. Simsapa Sutra. From the Samyutta Nikaya. It's a Theravada text. And I'll just show you quickly how the Buddha used a similar situation, but similar but not the same, to, let's see here, hold on here. There we go. We're gonna, yep, too big. There we go. Okay. This is Maurice Walsh's translation. Ajahn Thanissaro has done another translation. So at one time, this is a sutta, this is from Pali. At one time, the Blessed One was staying at Kosambi in the Simsapa grove. Simsapa is Indian rosewood. The Blessed One, the Buddha, taking a few Simsapa leaves in his hand, said to the monks, "What do you think, monks? Which are more numerous, the leaves in my hand or those in the trees of the grove?" "Lord, the Blessed One is holding a few leaves. Those in the trees are far more numerous." Okay, sounds similar? In the same way, monks, there are many more things that I have found out, but not revealed to you. What I have revealed to you is only a little. And why, monks, have I not revealed it? Because, monks, it is not related to the goal. It is not fundamental to the holy life. It does not conduce to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, tranquility, higher knowledge, enlightenment, or nibbana. That's why I haven't revealed it. And what, monks, have I revealed? What I have revealed is, this is stress, dukkha, suffering. This is where dukkha comes from. This is where dukkha ends. This is the path that leads to the end of stress, suffering, dukkha. And why, monks, have I revealed it? Because this is related to the goal. This is fundamental to the holy life, conduces to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, tranquility, higher knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. Therefore, I have revealed it. Therefore, monks, your task is to learn this is suffering. This is suffering's arising. This is suffering's cessation. This is the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. That is your task. Okay, so notice what we have here, right? This is not it's a similar analogy for a very different purpose. Almost you could say the opposite purpose. Vajra Treasury is saying to the questioners in the person of Moon of Liberation, he's saying, don't underestimate what the Buddha knows. You were blown away by what I showed you the 10th stage Bodhisattva knows. Truly, it is blow-awayable. It is incredible. However, the Buddha has completely let go of any identity with any stage of the Bodhisattva path. He merged in with the ocean of nirvana. His mind is infinitely knowledgeable. Okay? So he's saying the Buddha is, whoa, way out there. All right. In the Simsapa Sutta, the Rosewood Leaves Sutta, what the Buddha is saying is, never mind sophistry. Put your mind, never mind how much I know, put your attention on the task of cultivation, right? And I don't know the conditions. There are scholars of Buddhism who will tell you exactly when the Buddha spoke that sutra, what were the conditions. My guess is, knowing how those teachings arise, probably there were some enlightened, not say enlightened, there were some erudite Brahmins who were willing to debate and were trying hard to knock off the monks. Debate was pretty much how you gained fame and notoriety and popularity and power and authority in India at the time was how well you could state a case. Your vocabulary, not necessarily your virtue, that's the problem, but how good a talker you were. Could you 很会讲话, somebody who can really, really talk, you would get disciples. And the ability to talk when it's based on principle and virtue is called eloquence, right? When it's based upon a desire for fame, it's called sophistry. It's called 戏论 in Chinese, right? It's this simply verbal diarrhea and erudition without any principle behind it, or motivated, indeed, by selfishness and desire, right? So that's less helpful. That's what the Buddha's talking about. He's saying, I got this few leaves in my hand. You've identified that here in the forest there's many more leaves. He says, be content with the leaves that I've given you. Cultivate those, the Four Noble Truths in this case, and you will be far ahead. You'll be on the path. If you can master that, that is your task, he says. Never mind how much I know. So similar, interesting how the two stages of similar analogy for two different lessons entirely. So yeah, interesting. Okay, now we're going to pop back up to our text. Here we go. Next paragraph. 复次佛子如是天下，屈少许土。愚者无量，此法云地神通智慧，于无量劫，但说少分，况如来地。What's more, disciples of the Buddha, just as when you take a small amount of soil from the four continents, the remaining soil is limitless, so too are the wisdom and psychic powers of a bodhisattva on the stage of the Dharma cloud, such that, even in limitlessly many eons, one could describe only a tiny fraction of them. How much the more so, the abilities inherent on the stage of a Tathagata. All right, so let's just see what he wants us to know. He says, furthermore, I'm going to use the same image that I gave you, the same hypothetical case. Just like when you take a little bit of earth in your hand, you haven't really harmed the totality. There's an infinite amount left. Likewise, we're talking about your question. The Bodhisattva on the Dharma cloud stage, the 10th stage, his wisdom, his psychic powers are such that throughout limitlessly many eons, meaning you start now, start talking, use any amount of PowerPoint slideshows, keynote slideshows, what used to be called multimedia slideshows, right? You use lots and lots of whiteboards and blackboards with chalk, and you whistle and use sign language and you back it up with a string band. You're only going to describe a tiny fraction of what's available. how much the more so is that true for the Buddha? Good? Clear? Yep. Okay, moving on. Just keep going. Ready? 佛子我今为汝，引示为证，令汝得知如来境界。佛子假使十方一一方，各有无边世界，唯陈述诸佛国度。一一国度，得如是地菩萨充满。如甘蔗竹为道马丛林，彼诸菩萨于百千亿那有他劫修菩萨行所生智慧，必以如来智慧境界百分不及一，乃至优婆尼沙陀分亦不能及。Okay, that's one thought. Here we go. Disciples of the Buddha, I'll now give you an example to prove this to you so you can learn about the states of a Tathagata. Disciples of the Buddha, suppose that throughout each of the 10 directions there were Buddha lands as many as the fine motes of dust in boundlessly many world systems. And suppose that each of these lands were filled with bodhisattvas like those on this stage, in number like abundant stalks of sugarcane, groves of bamboo, reeds, rice plants, sesame seeds, or thickets of trees. The typo, thickets, S. All of the wisdom brought forth by all those bodhisattvas, by their cultivation of bodhisattva practices throughout hundreds of thousands of kotis, of nayutas, of eons, by comparison with the states of the wisdom of a single Tathagata, would not even amount to 1/100th, up to and including, not amounting to even a fraction as small as one part in an Upanishad. Okay. We got some Buddhist mathematics here, some Avatamsaka numbers. Oh boy. One of the cool, just out and out cool things about the Avatamsaka is it contains a chapter. It's the shortest chapter in the book. It contains an entire chapter on mathematics, Buddhist mathematics. And we're waiting for our Copernicus or Einstein, who are some of the great mathematicians. I don't know their names. We need Nathaniel Rounds, who's a theoretical mathematician. Nathaniel, you got to tell us some of the famous mathematicians. We're waiting for that person to show up in our Buddhist community to dig in to the Asamkhya chapter of the Avatamsaka and tell us what we got, because we don't know what we got, actually. It's a list of fabulous numbers, and the numbers have names. For example, do we have numbers with names? Yeah, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions, ergs, right? Those are zeros. Well, the Asamkhya chapter of the Avatamsaka has similar. It's called a limitless turning, and then a limitless turning squared. It's some of the numbers in that chapter. And you multiply them. You multiply a limitless turning by itself, and you get, 0, 0, 0, 0. So why do we need these? It's because once you, through your cultivation, step by step, start removing the boundaries that keep your consciousness rigidly balkanized, so your eyes don't mess with your ears and your ears don't mess with your skin, etc. Those are gone, and your consciousness could wash away. You could completely freak out and go nuts, but you don't, because you're grounded in the principles of the Dharma realm, which are inherent in our nature but need to be cultivated. Our new governors, our limitless Dharma realm governors, which are, you don't go crazy, you go wise. You go connected. That's called tongti dabe, same body, great compassion, as everything. So you know what a cow feels like when you separate mother from calf, right? You know what a rat feels when you catch it in the trap, as we did this morning. Poor rat was so freaked out. We got one in our Have a Heart rat trap. because he's been chewing his way through the floor of my room, and I don't want that. So we caught him and sent him to a new address not far away. And how terrified that poor critter, he's probably thinking of his family. But, I don't want to live with a rat. So we can't avoid it. Rats, where there are people, there are rats, right? So anyway, imagine if you were able to sympathize with all of the feelings available, all of the thoughts available. So, my goodness, the Buddha can do such things safely without going crazy. He, in fact, because of his practices and vows, uses it to teach compassionately. He knows what we're thinking. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So you better cultivate. I know it doesn't rhyme, but. So suppose throughout each of the 10 directions there were, so north, south, east, west, in between, above and below, there were Buddha lands, as many as, how many Buddha lands in all directions? Fine motes of dust in boundlessly many world systems. What is a fine mote of dust? It's too tiny. I have to tell you, I was preparing for today's lecture, sitting in my chair in front of my computer, and I looked to the left, and there was, you can see my finger here, slowly descending, there was a spider. Not a big one, just a kind of a California daddy longlegs, normal daddy longlegs. But he was slowly descending on a thread of spider silk, and I'm like, wait, and I'm looking, I can't see the thread. Here's in empty space, here's this spider happily descending, kind of like a paratrooper, out of his plane, down to the ground, and I'm like, okay, where did you come from? Just there you are, in my room, not outside, and so he hits the floor, and I'm watching him, and he's happily walking. He's just walking along, checks out my sandals, leaves one, goes to the next one, checks out my sandals, and I'm like, this is I live in the forest. It's a wonderful place. The forest exists inside my room. It's called the bush here in Australia. And this creature with spider consciousness manifested in my room almost invisibly. Where did he come from? He came from up there somewhere. Now he's on the floor. I don't want to step on him. And he disappeared inside my sandals. And I put them outside so I wouldn't step on him by mistake. And it's just like out of nowhere comes this living being who is very happy in his world. He's hungry, he's trying to move house, And boundlessly many world systems are in play right this minute. Worlds within worlds. And what kind of stability in Samadhi would it take to be in touch with all of them? Right? It's just like so much going on. And the Buddha, my mother's favorite Christian hymn was, "His eye is on the sparrow. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me." She loved that song. And the idea is God knows, even the smallest. If his eye is on the sparrow, how much the more so is God's loving gaze on me, bigger than a sparrow. So God is always with us, was my mother's strong faith in her Methodist Protestant tradition. It really worked for my mom. It served her well. So here's the Buddha who truly, we think, I'm not going to say the obvious criticism that 250,000 Americans just kind of fell out of God's gaze when COVID-19, or else they had it coming, they should have died. No, you can't, 250,000, and we're not done by any means. See, you don't want to critique systems that way. Comparative systems of faith is a fruitless way to spend your time. because believers believe, right? So, and belief is often in defiance of logic or reason. It's irrational sometimes. So, better to find the virtues and the commonalities and the goodnesses in systems of faith if you're going to relate, if you have to relate to people who believe differently. Okay, so if God's eye is on the sparrow, my mother truly believed that she would sit at his right hand upon death, and I hope she made it. I'm sure she did. But even the sparrow is in God's gaze. Here is a Buddha who, because he has opened his mind and his consciousness, sequentially, progressively, with difficulty, through勤修戒定慧, 熄灭贪嗔痴, diligently cultivating precepts, concentration and wisdom, and putting an end to greed, anger, and stupidity, he now can indeed merge his awareness with every living being, speak their language, come up with a way to teach them, and get them to wake up on their own, right? So the Buddha's project is to get into the minds of living beings to help us erase our own ignorance and the limiters and the governors and the attachments and the afflictions in our minds. His only enemy is darkness, you could say, is the things that cover our mind. And it's not an enemy, it's just that's his task. Okay, so how about that, right? Suppose there were Buddha lands in all directions, as many as tiny particles of dust. How many? Here's the spider coming down in my room. There's a whole world system that he's in the center of, right? So bodhisattvas in that number, like infinite world systems worth of motes of dust. How many? Stalks of sugarcane, groves of bamboo, reeds, rice plants, sesame seeds, thickets of trees, or iPhones, totally filling the world, right? How many iPhone 4s, 3s, 2s, and originals are filling landfills around the planet? That's not a question we should ask at this point, but lots, 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 lots. And they only came into being 20 years ago. So how about that? That many bodhisattvas. All of the wisdom that all of those bodhisattvas cultivated throughout hundreds of thousands of kotis of nayutis of eons, all that time, take it, quantify it, give it zeros so you know its name, and then bring one Buddha up and compare the two. So, back to the number. All those. This, now the Buddha here, or Vajra Treasury that is using available, he's using available agrarian Indian quantities, right? He's referring to stuff they knew about, right? Like sugarcane. Not that much in Ohio, where I grew up. You come from Florida, you know sugarcane. South Carolina, you know sugarcane. Where else? New South Wales, sugarcane, maybe? Do you know bamboo groves? Yeah, we got some bamboo, lots. Reeds, yep. Rice plants, not so much. Has to be a rice culture. Vietnam, lots of rice in Vietnam. Sesame seeds, right, or trees. Now you're talking. Gum trees. If it was Australia, we would say gum trees. The number of gum trees with koalas in them in Australia. Suppose you had that many bodhisattvas. They all cultivated wisdom. How much did they bring forth if they went at it for a very long time? The answer is a lot. A lot of wisdom. Okay? Compare that amount of wisdom with one Buddha's amount of wisdom. And what do you have? You have an Avatamsaka state, which is, it wouldn't amount to 1/100th. Usually there's hundredths, thousandths, 10,000th, million, billion. Then you get to one part in an Upanishad. And an Upanishad is the smallest counter available. What do we have? We have atoms, particles, ergs, right? What are some of the My scientific knowledge is lacking, so I can't even bring up the vocabulary. But an erg, I think, is what's the smallest counter? A quanta? Yeah, like that. Anybody want to speak up for science here? Anyway, Jerry, you can type it into the chat box. You're a scientist. So, tiny portion. It wouldn't amount even to that much. All those bodhisattvas' wisdom compared to the Buddha's wisdom can't compare. Okay, what is this? Avatamsaka state. So, what he is saying is, fear not, Buddhas have more than the bodhisattva, but the bodhisattva is amazing, is truly, truly, truly amazing. Okay, thank you for listening to my prattling on here, trying to let this sutra speak. We've been listening on, it's our Sunday, but it's Saturday in the Western Hemisphere. We've been listening to Master Hua's disciple, Madalena Tam, tell her stories of her encounters with Master Hua. She lectures in Mandarin, and it's translated into English and Vietnamese. And it's stories of my teacher, right? 我的师父,我的上人, me and my teacher. Great stories, because she's known Shifu longer than probably anybody alive except her older sister, who's got a year or two on her. And Madalena's memories are still very keen. And she's been stories of his time in Manchuria, and then when her father first met Master Hua in Hong Kong. He was in Hong Kong for a decade. She and her sister came to Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area, and invited Master Hua to come along too, to bring the Dharma to the West, and that was his vows. So he did. From 1962, they were able to bring their teacher to America, and she's telling these wonderful stories about what it was like when that happened. And now she's been doing it for a few weeks now, and she's now at the point where here we go. Right, got it. Okay. She's now at the point where she's talking about Gold Mountain Monastery, which started in 1970 in San Francisco. And Gold Mountain, that whole experience was, I came along in 1972, 1973. So that's this particular point in Master Hua's teaching in the West was something that I witnessed. And so today she told a story about one of the reasons why I became a monk. Let's see, that doesn't sound right. One of my influences that influenced me to become a monk, and it was another monk. She told a story about Bhikkhu Heng Ju. Bhikkhu Heng Ju. And Heng Ju, Tim Testu, after he did return to lay life, but he was the first 3 steps, 1 bow pilgrim. And his Dharma protector on that pilgrimage, Bhikkhu Heng Ju, was my college roommate, David Bernstein. And he also returned to lay life after a certain time. But when the two of them were on their 3 steps, 1 bow pilgrimage, it was electric, exciting, watching them bow and realizing that these two men had given up personal security in search of the Dharma and in search of awakening. They let go comfort, good food, comfortable sleep, the wish to not be hassled by everybody from loggers to Republicans to Christians to police, and no promise of success, but they set out on that path. And I was so inspired, and saw in them Master Hua's Dharma certifier and our Grand Master, Master Empty Cloud, Master Shuyan, who did the same practice from Putoshan in East China all the way to Wutaishan in far western China, 3,000 Chinese miles. So here was the ancients come alive. I was really motivated, moved by what I saw Bhikkhu Heng Ju and Bhikkhu Heng Yo do. So Madalena was telling a story today, and she got most of it right, but she left out a lot of details. Myself and Marty Verhoeven, former Bhikkhu Heng Chao, were present when this story happened. So Marty recently told this story to a group of Dharma Realm Buddhist University students, and it was recorded. And I want to share with everybody the story that Marty told, and at the same time introduce you all to a series here that we are proud of. Here we are. There's a series called Master Hua's Oral History Project. I'm going to type this. This is the YouTube channel. I'll type that into the chat box. And Jerry, if you and friends wanted to pass that on. Master Hua's Oral History Project is the name of the series. And they've got, how many do we have now? Let's see here. We've got, look, a substantial number of videos now at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So, not quite, on the way to 20, and there will be many more. And there are some very dedicated, very talented volunteers who are putting the series together. Videos, audios. And this is the story that we heard Madalena tell today as she was recounting Master Hua in America. And I knew that there was more to the story, so I thought this afternoon in our sutra lecture, this evening in our sutra lecture, I wanted to share Marty's telling of it because he's got a few more details. And now, let's jump out of there. Why am I going here? It's because if you read, this would probably be the punchline to this after you watch the video, but I'm going to make it the pre-punchline, the intro line, so you get the connection. Our Bodhisattva's wisdom on the 10th stage, compared to the Buddha's wisdom beyond the 10th stage, is not cultivated for fun or out of curiosity. It's motivated by a wish to help people get past their pain. If you had to say it in Chinese, it would be to jiao hua zhongsheng, to teach living beings. To teach us what? To teach us how to wake up, where our pain comes from, where our depression comes from, where our illnesses come from, and how to transform the states that we meet, how to change our vision of the states we meet so we can accord with every state, right? Not if you're sick, you suddenly get yourself well. It's you learn to live with the sickness and put it in perspective and look long. Remember what real health is like, right? So Buddhas start out on the path with a wish to help. That's where it's at. So I remember reading Tim Testu's biography, and he said one of the reasons why he became a monk was he showed up at Gold Mountain, and he was totally not thinking he was going to become a monk. He was a bad boy. He was essentially a crafty outlaw the laws that he broke were, he didn't break civil law. Sometimes he did. When he was a Navy, he was the ship's diver of the USS Rock in the Navy, and they were in the Philippines, and he and a buddy got drunk one night and stole the admiral's launch, the admiral's yacht, and drove it around Subic Bay in the Philippines until he was arrested by the MPs. And the reason he wasn't court-martialed and thrown out and thrown in jail was because he was needed for the USS Rock's missions. They couldn't replace him, so he got out, got free. That's Tim Testu, right? Stealing the admiral's yacht and getting caught and still getting away with it. So he came to Gold Mountain Monastery after searching for what was a challenge for his overabundant energy. His Dharma name was Guoyu, which means to go beyond, to always exceed. You just always, give him a rule and he will break that. You couldn't fence him in. So that was Tim. Just too much Scorpio energy. So one day he was at Gold Mountain, and he came face to face with the person who he was drawn to and afraid of, Master Hua. Face to face with him. And Tim, who was fearless, totally fearless. How do you jump out of a submarine into water to go repair the fins, at 500 feet depth, How do you do that? You got to be cold-blooded. So Master Hua comes face to face with Tim, and Shifu says, "Afraid? You afraid me?" And Tim says, Shifu, I'm afraid of you. Why so afraid? Tim said, "Because you can read my mind," he said. Shifu said in perfect English, "Of course I read your mind." He said, "How else could I teach you?" He said. So there's the expedient wisdom of a real teacher. Of course I can read your mind. How else could I teach you if I didn't know what you were thinking? I have to be ahead of my disciples, right? So here's someone who has gone beyond those built-in, normal, quote, chemicals that keep our senses in their rigid silos, because that's all we can handle is little tiny sips of input. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations of touch. We can only handle a little bit, or we'd be overwhelmed, right? Here's a teacher who is so solid in his samadhi, he can tune in to his disciples and then come up with a way to teach them. Okay, with that in mind, now we go to the story. Now, this is a 6-minute YouTube video from Master Hua's Oral History Project. You ready? Here we go. This is Marty Verhoeven explaining.
This vow never to do it again, and the pie's right in my hand, and I can't give it up.
Preview.
God, here I made this vow never to do it again, and the pie's right in my hand, and I can't give it up.
Memoirs of Master Hua. Om Mani Padme Hum.
So this story you've heard before, but I want to tell it again about Heng Ju. As you know, Heng Ju will admit this, he had a sweet tooth, a huge sweet tooth. And so part of his cultivation was to regulate the impulses of the body that always want to just, impulsively do whatever. And so he took this as I'm gonna control this sweet tooth. And so it was a Chan session, and the Chan session was going on many days. Now at that time,
I gotta stop you. Who is this monk? That's me. Here is David Bernstein, Heng Yo. Here is Tim Testu, Heng Ju, right? Here is Heng Kong. Here is Heng Lu. Here is Heng Su. Heng Huan. Yeah, Chan session. Okay, back to the story.
Just around the corner from Gold Mountain Monastery was this lovely little bakery. And every day that bakery put out these incredible sweet donuts and pastries and whatnot. And once you went by that bakery, even though you went into the meditation hall, the bakery followed you. It was there in your mind. And at lunch, at those days, and Heng Ju will attest to it, the lunch was not very scrumptious. And so for Heng Ju, this was really bitter practice. So he went 4 days, 5 days into the retreat. By about the 6th day of the session, into the 7th day, he couldn't take it anymore. And so he sort of indicated walking around this confined space was too small for a Navy guy. He needed to go outside and walk. So he walked outside. Now, in those days, even the lay people wore robes during the retreat. And I mentioned before that the robes then, before we cut off these long sleeves, were Batman robes. I don't know how to describe them. They hung way down, right? And they were hollow inside. And so you could go and walk. So he walked and looked left and right, and around the corner to the bakery. And he went in and he said, I want 3 of those little berry pies, because berry pie was the weakest thing. So he got 3 berry pies, and he's going back, and he's eating one quickly, and he gets around the corner. He's getting closer. He's trying to pace himself, because soon someone's going to go. And so in goes a second berry pie, and then, oh my God, and he's like, because the inside of his robe turns it on and wipes it and then puts it back in so it wouldn't show. Now he's got the last pie, but it's not finished. And he's going, oh my God, I should throw it away. I can't throw it away. And he's like, oh my God, here I made this vow, never to do it again, and the pie's right in my hand, and I can't give it up. And nobody's talking to him or whatnot. And what am I going to do? And he's right at the door, and he drops it into his robe. So this is after lunch, and he's going around, walking, standing, sitting, meditating. This berry pie is hanging down in the pouch of his robe. And, he's going, Om Mani Padme Pai, Om Mani. I mean, he's thinking along these lines. And he's like, what am I going to do? I can't eat it now. He thought of every break he'd go in the kitchen maybe, and then somebody else would walk in, or the master would walk in, and they'd go back in the pouch and back and get. And so he completely moved off of his Watto to, the pie thing. And it went till the end of the day. He waited and waited till everybody went to bed. And this was now going between 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. Then he went into the bathroom. And in those days, the bathroom had the old windows. You have ropes with pulleys. And so if you open them fast, you go, boom, and the pulley would drop. So he sat there with ninja samadhi, lifting that window so slowly that the rope and the thing never made a sound. He must have been sweating, just slowly, because it went out to the fire escape. Slowly, and he finally got it open. Nobody heard it. He's like, ah. And he slips into the fire escape, goes up to the roof. And he's on the roof, and he's just sitting there. This is nirvana. And he takes a big bite of the pie, and he's like, oh my gosh. But then he's like, oh, but geez, my vow and everything, and then he hears some noise in the fire escape. He's going, what? Who is that? I'm not going to share my pie. And he looks, and the moonlight is out, and he sees this shaved bald head, and it's Master Hua, the abbot. And he's coming up the fire escape. Heng Ju goes, shit. And so Master Hua comes towards him, and Heng Ju goes the other way. Master Hua turns around, and then Heng Ju turns the other way, and Heng Ju takes his beads out, and he's got the pie in one hand, the beads in the other, and he's pretending he's up there reciting, and they're reversing directions, and Shiv is just patiently going back and forth with them, and finally they meet face to face, and there he is, blueberry dripping down his chin onto his robe, covering his beads. He's sitting there like that, completely exposed. And all the master says to him is, how does it feel?
你觉得怎么样?
And he turns and walks back in. And like Drew said, he told me later, he said, I sat there for like 15 minutes, frozen. And he said, I was expecting a blast, a scolding, the Chan master who takes a stick and whatnot. And he asked me, how does it feel? And I started, what did he mean by that? And then he went through this whole thing. How does it feel not to have control when I wanted to have control? How does it feel to be deceiving and cheating? How does it feel to take this vow and not keep it? And from that time...
Okay, pause. Real life photo the next morning. Shifu offering a huge berry pie to Heng Ju, and look at his face.
He just came back in, finished the session, but changed his whole approach.
Okay, that's the last word. I got to stop it because Marty's last word is, and he changed his whole approach. Look at Shifu knowing that he has taught, that it's connected. Look at Tim. Tim is subdued, right? He's been taught now. And there's a, right? This is the good and wise advisor. And why you go like the Bodhisattva to cultivate all that time so that when it connects, your disciple looks like that with his face. Right? He says, and he changed his whole approach. Tim Testu was subdued, right? Because the teacher knew what he was thinking. Okay, let's review that briefly. So Tim was like, I definitely know that pie and cookie shop that Marty was describing. It was run by a Greek couple, and they had baklava. Baklava is this Greek honey pastry. Omi tofu. It was, for somebody who was on a sugar fast, that was truly seductive. So anyway, Tim had a sweet tooth. It was the 6th day of the Chan retreat. He'd been really good. He felt he owed himself a reward for being so good. He bought 3 of them. He could only eat 2 because it was just a 3-minute walk from 16th Street and Albion, where the pie shop was, and the 15th Street and Albion, where the monastery was. Still had 1 left when he got back. He just put on his robe, sat with it all day, so that pie was on his head through the entire Chan session, thinking about it. So in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, in the dark, slides the bathroom window up, goes out the fire escape, up to the roof, thinks he's finally got his chance. And Marty described it as seeing Shifu's bald head. It wasn't. It was a yellow knit skull cap. That was what came up over the ladder. And Tim knew at that point it was all over. And Shifu walks on the roof, and they walk, and boom. Ni jue怎么样啊? How do you feel? You know? And then that's all he said, went back down. So the question is, how did Shifu know? That's the question. How did Shifu know that Tim had snuck out the bathroom window and climbed the fire escape at 2 a.m.? Because if he couldn't read our thoughts, he couldn't teach us, you know. So when you have a teacher like that, you are subdued. You can't cheat him, you can't lie to him, you can't fool him, you can't pull anything over on him. You have to surrender or leave, you know. And Tim, because Tim was so strong, he was so awesome in his competitiveness. You couldn't beat Tim with strength or with savvy. He was a champion at everything. To be a submarine diver, they didn't have SEALs back then. He was a Navy SEAL, right? Fierce. And he completely put his palms together and bowed to Master Hua because Tim couldn't beat him, you know. So what a great illustration. Last week I talked about the moving the pile of sheetrock, right? And this week it's a teacher who can teach you because he knows what you're thinking. Oh my goodness. So really, really powerful. Let's see. So we've had illustrations today of the amount of soil on palm compared to the amount of soil on the earth, and then it meant to say, don't underestimate the Buddha. We've had the rosewood leaf sutra, Simsapa Sutra, sutta from the Pali, where the Buddha's using the same comparison, leaves on his hand versus the leaves in the forest, to illustrate a different principle, which is cultivate what's in front of you. don't be confused by sophistry or the ability to argue good points, because what matters is your ability to recognize suffering, where it comes from, how it can end, and then walking the path that ends stress, that wakes you up from depression once and for all, right? So, same kind of teaching for different purposes. And then this amazing, amazing, amazing illustration by Vajra Treasury of what a Buddha knows. It says no number, the smallest particle can't compare. All the Bodhisattvas in history, their wisdom compared to one Buddha's wisdom is tiny. That's his point. Okay? So that's where we are. Jin Wei Shr, if you're on board, did you have anything to contribute, and don't feel you need to, but some reflection on this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dharma, so maybe I can. I'm very glad that you shared the story of the Master Heng Ju and Tim Testu, and especially for me, it's very something what I'm trying to cultivate as a monk. And although we don't have the teacher such Master Hua, but we still have, of course, his teaching. And I think and we discuss about this a lot in the review class, that this what Master Hua from another perspective point out to Tim Testu when he catch him when he was, consuming his pie on the roof.
Right.
He kind of catch him, right? And he asked, how does it feel? And this feeling, and this picture also kind of showing later kind of embarrassing face, little bit, it's like, oh gosh. And somehow in his process, he missed this, right? Because if we are in tune with our heart and mind, our heart knows this. Our good knowing advisors in ourselves knows.
Sorry. Continue. Sorry.
When we move this place, when we validate precepts or do something what is not according to principle, somehow our heart knows, but we don't listen. Is kind of, and he kind of also pointed out this kind of vulnerable space. If we are aware, why I should do it, it doesn't feel good. And it's kind of back him to reflection, right? How does it feel when we do something what is not wholesome? And at the same time, we have this kind of compass when we something what is wholesome. It feels okay, it feels good, it's kind of resonate with heart. And so this is kind of interesting how we can, be in tune with this our inner advisor and kind of navigate through these impulses and whatever we experience moment by moment. And the precepts helps us to kind of keep this balance and to still check in how things flow through our heart. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So the place, all of the states of all of the psychological, let's use that language, all the psychological states of Buddhism that we talk about, wisdom, compassion, kindness, equanimity, etc. It's hard to find equivalents in Western culture right away. But the one that you're pointing to in your example of conscience works really well. There is that, I grew up hearing about a conscience. Always let your conscience be your guide, said Jiminy Cricket in the Walt Disney movie Pinocchio, right? Always let your conscience be your guide. The conscience, as I understood it growing up, no connection with Buddhism at all, was the quiet voice where you knew right from wrong, right? You didn't have to ask, no one told you, you knew yourself right from wrong. And as you're describing, how Master Hua, pointing Tim by saying, how does it feel, didn't apply any pressure whatsoever It was just a few words, but it was enough at the right time to totally turn Tim around. Tim was a monk. He had finished his Sambui Bai, right? His 3 steps, 1 bow was over. He was already this hero. He was about to launch himself on a tour of Asia with Master Hua and Heng Yo, going to India, going to Vietnam, going to Taiwan, And yet, it took this 5-word teaching to totally hold the mirror up to Tim in the place where the leverage worked. If Master Hua had taken a wooden sword, a Chan sword, and whacked him about the head, it would have bounced right off. Tim would have gone, I'll show you, I'll get a bigger pie next time. He didn't. He, with a few words, at the right time, perfectly timed, just flipped him around, and he felt ashamed. And look, he did it with good humor. That's the other thing. He didn't throw Tim out. He kept him close. Look how, and the next morning, gave him a huge piece of pie. And Tim had already eaten 3 berry pies in the last, 12 hours. He didn't, as he was saying, he told me afterwards, he said, that was the last piece of pie I ever wanted to eat. And Shifu gave him this giant pie. Go ahead, eat it. You want it? And yet his conscience was alive because he was holding the precepts. And as Jin Wei Shr just mentioned, the precepts wake us up to that keen sensitivity to not only what is right and what is wrong, but what you aspire to, what you would like to be able to do when that place of knowing right from wrong gets a foundation in true principle that is based on the Buddha's wisdom. It's ancient, it's timeless, it's true, right? So, anyway, great, thanks for sharing that. Wonderful story, and this began with Madalena today, giving us the outline of Tim's pie story. She called it a cherry pie. It wasn't. It was a berry pie. And when we get the details from Marty, who was in the Chan session, down below, so was I, and we wonder what's going on with Tim. Why was I was on one of the tables when Shifu brought out that berry pie and handed it to Tim. So, there we go. Good stuff. Okay, Bodhisattvas teach. That's why they go through all that stuff, and they know what's on our mind, so they can teach us, right? Okay, now is my chance to share with you another online resource, which is what? I would like people to announce that the Dharma Radio music project has now been released out into the world. There it is. Buddhist literature into songs. That's my next music CD, although it's not a CD. It's available for electronic download. At the same time, now, if you would like to get a copy of Dharma Radio, Buddhist literature into songs, one way to do it is to go out to iTunes or Spotify. If it's iTunes, I get the money. But you can go out to, let's type in Heng Shr, Reverend Heng Shr. Reverend Heng Shr, you gotta spell it right, out on iTunes. And look what comes up. By golly, Dharma Radio, Buddhist Stories of Awakening and Paramita. There it is. So we're out on iTunes. And there are no reviews, but anybody who buys it, we would love to have a review. I'm making a bald request for a shameless plug for reviews. Reviews are good on iTunes. Anyway, there it is, along with Paramita, that's been there since 2009. And you can do that, and you can listen to the, you can listen to the clips if you choose to.
Hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see.
Okay, that's been out there for a long time. Now, okay, just to say, you can do that. But you can, and if you do so, let's click on this big link, and the Dharma Radio page will take you to an introduction to it, where it came from, what's included, and 30-second demo clips of all 13 songs. For example, this is Empty Cloud Wakes Up. And playing the banjo is Fabrizio Alberico, not me. So here are the lyrics to the song and the story about them. 北自普落地相生命力力虚空粉碎也狂心当下息 right? And the story behind the song and all the other songs. So there's that. Now, the other thing that's fun, and
People ask me,
stop.
what did you?
There we go. The fun part that we also want to introduce to you at the same time is good karma music. So if you come here, you go to dharmaradio.org, type that in, and Jerry, if you wouldn't mind, dharmaradio.org, pass that on to folks. If you go to dharmaradio.org, click on good karma music. You can buy the album if you like. We would rather that you go to Good Karma Music, and we describe what it is here. Do a kind deed. Do a good deed. Do an act of kindness. For Good Karma Music, tell us the story. Put in your name, your email, what the story was, where you're from. Then there's a question here so we don't get spam robots. Agree that we can share the story and tell us what you did. I did a good deed today. Today I helped an old monk across the street into Samadhi, right? I helped an old monk enter Samadhi. Okay, tell us the story. What was it that you did? Agree that your story can be shared if you care to, and then submit the post. We will, as soon as we receive it, our computer server will send you all 13 songs plus the PDF booklet that has the information. The fun part about that is, look, here are the stories. Here are the stories that people have sent in. Santa Clara, we wear masks as soon as we step from our house. We step aside to have 6 feet if we see other people. We avoid gatherings. Sorry for missing to be present at the gathering started back in February 2020. Wishing the world would be peaceful soon. Okay, good story. That's from Santa Clara, California. From UK, this just arrived. I live in the UK, London. I'm taking the second lockdown as an opportunity to repent my mistakes. Found my head, lower back, and legs are weak and cold following Earth Store repentance literature downloaded from DRBA Chinese. I have dreams almost every night. I can see how I forcefully stepped on insects. I honestly can't believe what I did in one of my dreams. I'm in the position of not wanting to share it and wanting to share it. Got it, understand. Because I don't promote supernatural power and mislead people about Buddhism on one hand, on the other, I agree, if there's a testimony of Buddha Dharma, why not? I want to get closer to the Buddha Dharma. Send me a copy of the songs. We will. That's a good deed. To be able to share that, how you want to confess it, but it's hard, right on. I totally get it. Wuxi, Zhongguo, Wuxi, recited Om Mani Padme Hum 1,000 times. Good enough. We'll send you the music. Alan from Sichuan, China. Growing up as the only child, I never cooked much, even though I eat every day. Recently, living with a dozen fellow cultivators, I've been inspired by the care and joy they put into preparing and sharing food. So I signed up to be apprentice chef every day for half a month. I cooked a meal independently for the whole group, a simple meal, white rice, curry, stir-fry veggies, but I had so much fun and gratitude in heart. While cooking, my gracious guests loved the food. It was all gone before I remembered to take a photo and send to my parents, who cooked for me my whole life, but I have never cooked for them. There you go, right? Good deed. We send you music for that. Good karma. Yukaya. My parents recently moved to another country, which has been a lifelong dream of theirs, but they expected they would be able to return periodically to stay connected with friends and family here. With the pandemic, all those plans changed. This has been especially challenging for them, as family members have graduated, passed away, gotten married since the travel restrictions went in place. I've been trying to write them regular letters, emails, at least once a week or two to stay in touch with them so they feel more connected. Right on. Filiality at work. Okay, how about that? These are the stories which, to my mind, are so valuable, so much more valuable than simply, buying songs on iTunes or wherever you purchase your music. We will take your money happily and donate it to a good cause, but we'd rather have the stories and the good deeds in the world, good karma music. You can choose from Paramita, American Buddhist folk songs, Buddhist stories for awakening, Dharma Radio, Buddhist literature and music. If you want all three, do 3 good deeds. If you want 1 million downloads, do 1 million good deeds. Okay, there we are. That's the story. So that's now out there. Plus, Dharma Radio as a website is a very interesting website. We had internet radio going for a long time. We have, because of the focus on the new music release, we have temporarily suspended the internet radio. But the Chan Chronicles are here. This is recorded podcasts on, from Fabrizio Alberico and myself, talking about my teacher, our teacher, and that's available here to listen to. Not very many of them, but it was very worthwhile, and I hope there'll be more later. So today we introduced Master Hua's Oral History Project, and we introduced the Dharma Radio music CD. Jerry says Saturday lecture is still broadcast live on Dharma Radio. Great. All righty. Okay, just to let you know about that, let's see here. Jin Wei Shr, do you have any announcements for Berkeley Monastery?
Yes, I have few. Yes, Dharmaster. So tomorrow we'll have a special event. We'll transmit 8 precepts for those people who will join Emperor Liang Repentance Ceremony hosted in Gold Sage San Jose. So 8 a.m. you can find on our website is the link over there if you wish to join and take 8 precepts, and you can find also link to join the whole week of bowing practice in Golden Sage Monastery. So this is gonna happen tomorrow, 8 a.m. We'll start with a transmission of precepts. Otherwise, what else we have here? We have everyday activity starting from our morning ceremony, 5 a.m., through bowing practice, meditation, daily reflection, and afternoon recitation, 12:30, and evening ceremony. And almost every day you can find some lectures as well. So we have pretty full schedule every day. So hopefully you can join us.
Alrighty. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, a lot going on. Using Zoom and YouTube extensively and thoroughly. So making the most. And the monks at Berkeley Monastery didn't expect that this idea of putting the daily schedule online was going to become a good and wise advisor but there's no time to waste. And as soon as you're done with lunch, you run to turn the cameras on, light the incense, and do the next piece of the daily schedule, because people are waiting around the world for the monks to show up and get the ceremony underway. So it's become a very wholesome pressure to keep things rolling. And there are events that begin here in the Gold Coast Dharma Realm in Australia that are included on the Berkeley weekly ceremony, right, Sam? Including mantra recitations and the Universal Door chapter, yeah. So through making the most of the resources, through the pandemic, forcing us to do it online, we are tying Dharma Realm Buddhist Association together. That people could switch from morning ceremony in Berkeley, California, to the recitation of mantras in Gold Coast, Queensland, and then back to Berkeley, back in the city of 10,000 Buddhas for, great compassion and repentance, is truly wonderful, unexpected that we would be able to use the available technology to do so much as a community. Alrighty, 140 people today on YouTube, and how many? 66 including Chinese Dharma friends. So 200 people listening in. Alrighty, we hope that you will indeed, if you pick up Dharma Radio CD album on iTunes, leave a review, leave a comment. If you buy it on Amazon.com, leave a review. Say why you liked it or didn't. We want an honest review, not just good words, right? And if you decide you'd prefer to get it for a good deed, tell us what your good deed was. Those stories are very, very inspiring. Okay, we have, let's see here, Medicine Buddha Mantra is our last event for today, and the point of this is to use the mantra as our transference of merit. So ordinarily, right, we would be doing our may every living being the familiar transference tune. Instead, because of the conditions of the pandemic, we're using Medicine Buddha's power tool, his mantra, called the mantra for anointing the crown of the head. And I need to say, back when I was a brand new cultivator, I met the teachings of Medicine Buddha, and I wanted to learn more in English, and the only book that told the story was Professor Raoul Birnbaum's The Healing Buddha. And apparently, Professor Birnbaum had written about Medicine Buddha while he was a grad student at Columbia, and then he went on and published his research as a standalone book. And I was, at the time, in, now let's see here, please share the link to the Medicine Buddha's mantra. Oh, right, okay. So here was this, I was in Vancouver at Gold Buddha Monastery and had just decided to learn more about Medicine Buddha. And there was Professor Birnbaum's The Healing Buddha book available right now. It's out there on Amazon or wherever you buy your books, and Buddhist books. And I remember being so amazed that this scholar had a heart of faith for the Buddha's teaching, and so much about Medicine Buddha was accessible now in English. It didn't occur to me then that 40 years later, I would be using Sanskrit and a banjo to bring this mantra forward. And so Sam here in the Gold Coast and I put together a video of the mantra being sung. And this is, you're looking at the outside of the hall that we're sitting in right this minute. So if you go to Medicine Master Buddha Mantra, Medicine Master Buddha Mantra, here it is right here, on Dharma Radio Live, Dharma Realm Live, you will see this mantra being chanted and explained too. For example,
in times of plague, times of a pandemic, we turn to Medicine Master Buddha, the healing Buddha. He has
I have to turn on the closed captions, I see.
That is specifically...
Stop. Closed captions. Here. There we go. Aha.
Returning us to health, returning the balance of the health of the planet, and celebrating all the good vibrations of abundant good health, long life, and harmony among humanity, heaven, and earth.
Okay, so then we get going and do this. So that's available online now. Go out to Medicine Master Buddha Mantra, or go to Dharma Realm Live and look for it there, and you'll be able to see and read. It's available now. You can read the lyrics down below as anytime you please, anytime you choose, as long as you can get to YouTube. Of course, in China, that doesn't help much. What does matter is the wish that you make in your mind as we transfer this merit. You dedicate the goodness that comes from joining together with our virtual worldwide community of 200 folks on a Saturday night, on a Sunday afternoon, to look into the Flower Garland Sutra and the Bodhisattva and the 10th stage. Use that goodness and send it out. This is healing energy from a medicine master, from a great healing king, right? Medicine Buddha. So, make your own vow. Let's do it, and then recite it 3 times. Here we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisajya Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Adhyata Om Vasaje Vasaja Samudgate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisajya Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Adhyata Om Vasaje Vasaja Samudgate Swaha Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Adhyata Om Vasaje Vasaja Samudgate Swaha. May it be so. To the healing, to the healing, to the great healer. Svaha, may it be so. Om. Okay, I'm going to ring the bell 3 times, invite you to join me if you care to bow to the Buddhas 3 times, and then we'll bow 3 times to Master Shenhua. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. See you all next week, everyone. Thanks for joining.